Greetings, and salutations. So I'm looking through here. They just dropped a hot fix, and I think it's kind of funny because it's not funny, but it's maybe comical is the better word. I don't know if you can tell. I ate some spicy noodle, and yeah, it was pretty spicy. So the they got this hot fix, and it 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 sends an underlying message. They talk about currently known issues, and then they go in there and they patch notes, fixed fixed a crash that would happen randomly when the game was loading item data, right? Um so they had done something, and then crafting fixes, some random crafting fixes in this patch. um the recipe for hardened steel bars has changed now. For It requires one steel bar and one black ice. I don't know if I agree with this, but I think before it was two. It was a two steel bars to get to your hardened steel. So actually, black ice is pretty easy to come by, but as far as the lore goes, black ice is basically like a form of corrupted magic. And it implements itself in the world through the manifestation of black ice. That's why in the Worn Torn Sanctuary, while you get all that black ice when you get back there next to the boss, is because he's corrupted, and the corruption is the manifestation of the black ice around. So now, are they saying um, that hardened steel is a manifestation of the corruption? Anyways, I know this is kind of segue off to the thing, but they there's some balancing there, but also I kind of get the vibe that they don't whoever's making these changes doesn't understand the lore. They need to do a little lore homework. Fixed an issue where exceptional and flawless items could be crafted without having the correct feats unlocked. So a thrall is required to have a feat to craft flawless and exceptional items. Um, so feat unlocked. I mean, it's not tied to star metal. Um, Unless I'm thinking of something else, because you can make flawless iron and flawless steel. So I'm curious how that randomly manifested itself in the latest patch. Here we have the Annihilator weapon has been rebalanced. No longer has 100% armor penetration. That's rebalancing. So I had done a couple of rants on this because this item was engineered to fight the champion, and because what they did is they maxed out the armor on the champion and the guardian, but what happens is the player base got a hold of it, and then they could use this 100% armor pen and then just basically kill everybody's thralls, which led into base defense. And those thralls, even if you had 800 or 1,000 armor on them, you could just go in there and murder their thralls without any resistance. Especially if you equipped them on a thrall like a Cimmerian Berserker, and it would just roll through. So here's my follow-up question to this: is I'm being super critical because I'm seeing a trend of lack of understanding, a lack of depth, a lack of knowledge. So did they uh, reduce the armor value on the champion and because they're almost not killable. I mean, you got to go in there with a decked out thrall, a full party, healing arrows. It's quite a feat to kill the champion. The War Torn Sanctuary boss is not as bad as the champion, but that champion armor needs to be reduced by 20% if they've gone through and rebalanced the Annihilator. And if they've stripped off the 100% armor pin, then they also need to give an attribute to this Annihilator. Just debuffing stuff without any form of creativity or logic or thought process um, is not really acceptable. I mean, it's a quick fix, and ultimately it stops the griefing that takes place because you just get one of these and go kill everybody's thrall, um, which supports that player-based topic or narrative that I've been talking about for the last couple of months. So you can hear those spicy noodles wreck my sinuses. And then the fourth one, fix several issues regarding the oil items. oil oil items. And if you follow my content, you know how personally how I feel about about the oil. It's such a, and one of my gripes. And so I got to get in there and I got to see if the if they've debuffed or taken out. They need to take out the thrall oil altogether. That's just the quick fix, is just eliminate the thrall oil. You apply it to a Truncheon and it's more effective. And it, instead of knocking them out in 10 hits or 20 hits or 30 hits, you knock them out in 2 hits. So hopefully they get rid of that garbage. The oil thing. It's just I think the armor kits, the legendary armor kits, or the equivalent of legendary, are good. Don't get me wrong. It's a pattern or a theme, but that oil bullshit, it's like, it just speaks to, like, we have no creativity, and so we're gonna come up with some random oil shit, and then instead of listening to the community about, like, how about lockable, blockable, animal pins. People have been asking for that shit forever, but they just want to come up with some random oil that breaks the game and allows individuals to haze the new population coming in, and then they leave because they don't understand why all their stuff is gone. So it's like they do super counterproductive to the community, instead of bolstering the community, like setting up mechanisms that support community development. They put in mechanisms that ultimately drive the population away. Fixed an issue where the soothing buff would grant too much health regeneration. I had never encountered that. That's interesting. Too much health regeneration. I found it hard to actually get the soothing buff, and this is why. Because if you build in the cold, I'm sorry, if you build in the heat, there is nothing that you can do to lower the temperature of your building. So if you just happen to be in one of those places that's just right there on the cusp of being super hot, and I struggled with this for a long time, in some of my playthroughs, where if you're in the cold, you can always build a fireplace, and you just click the fireplace and it turns on and it generates heat. You can build a campfire. You can start the campfire and it'll generate heat. And so there's all these mechanisms in place. There's like 6 or 7 mechanisms that'll take a building structure in the cold and drop the temperature, but there's nothing that'll take a building in the desert and then raise the temperature. Like an ice box doesn't lower the temperature of the building by a couple degrees. I mean, it'd be great if it did, because you could just stack ice boxes, and then because ultimately you're going to need a couple of them anyways, for your pets and stuff. So if you could just put a couple ice boxes in there, and each ice box lowered the temperature a couple of degrees Celsius or maybe Fahrenheit, so cumulatively, if you stack them all together, you could bring it down into a neutral range. Um, but they have mechanisms for one side of the coin, but not the other. And so this is that depth stuff that I've been talking about. It really. So what's missing out of this, though. Looking behind the veil, what's missing out of this? How about armor rebalance for pets? You know how easy it would be to just get into the script and be like, elite or greater crocodile, 450 armor, right? Because you're not creating the asset, you're just changing a number from 84 to 484, right? Greater wolf, 484. Greater elephant, 675. Greater rhino, 675. How about rebalance the armor on the pets so that way they're relevant again? That would be one of those things that would cascade across, make pets relevant instead of people just abandoning them altogether. How about, I know this is a little turns into a little bit of rant, but how about make it to where rock nose, scorpions, and I'm sure there's one or two other that are immune to poison. How about adding undead archers? I mean, they're already in the game. You don't even need to add a recipe. You just change the name of the icon to undead archer in the alchemy basin, and or the fire cauldron, and craft an undead archer. I mean, all those assets are completely already there. It is just some minor script text changes that could be knocked out in like 2 or 3 hours, and it would profoundly improve the gameplay across the board. But um, they're worried about one steel bar to one black ice. Like that's the shit there. Like that doesn't cascade across the world to improve gameplay and make it to where all these systems that are built like the pet system to where they're relevant again. So I look at this stuff and um, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on, and I know I'm being a little overly critical, a little critical. Uh, but maybe you can see it too. And I don't want to be negative. There's a lot of good work. I do like the style of the new DLC. I'm happy for them. I'm happy they followed through with it. I love the iron gates. I love the overall graphic appearance. They're missing wedged vaulted wedge ceiling tiles though. They're missing that vaulted wedge ceiling tile, and they need to fix ladders. But I have all that stuff posted on my wish list stuff. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight. I gotta get into the single player mode and see if what they've done, what the new armor pin for the Annihilator is, and I gotta see what the potions look like. Hopefully they pull the potion for the truncheon out altogether, and that'll prevent any potential hazing and uh, diminishing. I don't want to use the word hazing because it is a diminishing a population. Because if you create such a negative player experience, people leave, and so you want to keep people around long enough to get a hook. Because if you don't get the hook and they burn after 2 weeks, um, they're not going to buy any of the DLCs. They're not going to get their friends to play. They're not going to get any of that other things. Those because success is word of mouth, and so um, I know I've ranted on about this a lot, but hopefully there's a lot of depth and perception there that will help evolve your understanding of some of these patch notes. But as always, you don't need to subscribe. I don't, that's not a metric but the comments are usually what usually I consider a measure of success is the comments. So as always, thank you for watching.